The first question I want to ask you: politics,
Fashion.
Sexuality.
religion, films,
Nigeria.
sports, music. Because of my career, just ask. Hi, yes, it's a new week and it's time to ask Funmi. And you know it when you see me grinning from ear to ear, it's because I've got my hands, or shall I say my fangs, on someone else and someone I really like, or shall I say someone whose work I really like. So, last year, flying to Rwanda, I started reading this book. I did not put it down until the end. I know I'm acting all excited. That's because these days it's hard to find books that just grips you, grabs you, and won't let you go until you finish. The writer of this book is with me in my home today. Yele Adenle is not just a writer, he's also an actor and a satirist and other things that you'll discover in the course of this conversation. Hi, Yele.
Hi, thank you for having me on the show.
I love the book.
Thank you.
I really, really do. Do people tell you this?
Oh, this is the first time I'm hearing it.
That's a lie. That is such a lie, but I love the lie. The question that was sent to me that I need your help with is, what are the challenges of cross-cultural relationships and should they be attempted at all?
It depends on how you define culture. I'm assuming that maybe the person who's asked the question is talking about interracial relationships. Because if we're talking about cross-cultural, it could be the marriage between my father and my mother.
Absolutely.
You know, both Yoruba, both, you know, from ruling families, as it were, but two very different cultures.
It's like the Jebus and the Oyos.
Or yours, exactly.
Different.
It's different culture, and culture itself is a morphing and an ever-changing thing. I do wish we would stop treating culture as a static, as a given. But if the question is about interracial relationships and should they be attempted, you can't stop human nature. You know, at some point the concept of race was created, which is not real. I do wish we would stop using the term race. I think there's knowledge now that race is not real. Under the skin, every human being is the same. The color of your skin, which is the amount of melanin in your body, has no bearing on whether or not you fall sick or how intelligent you are, how strong you are, how great a dancer you are. I mean, all these cliches is all based on this continued notion that race is a thing. Now, you can't stop human beings. You can't stop people from mixing with people. I read sort of like a biography recently where the author talked about apartheid South Africa. I had his name on my tongue right now, I just forgot. Great guy, I'll remember him now. Talk show host in America.
Trevor Noah?
Trevor Noah. His parents got together when it was illegal.
Yeah, I read that book.
Born a Sin.
Yeah, Born a Sin. Yeah. Born a Crime.
Born a Crime, rather.
Yeah.
You know, and he made the observation, the very human observation, that you just can't stop people from falling in love with each other.
And didn't you see the absurdity of the rules?
Yes.
It was absurd.
Yeah.
You know?
It was beyond. I mean, it was designed by the entire apartheid thing was designed by one person, isn't it? And this is the problem with allowing one person too much power, because this person was probably sick. It was probably deranged. It was probably evil in some pathological way, you know. And it convinced them that you can group people into whites and coloreds and natives and so on and so forth. And they had, I mean, you've read the book, or you know about things like the pencil test, and you could be white today, and because you've offended someone in government, you can suddenly become classed as black. Interestingly, they didn't have a class for Chinese people, so they became black. But because they needed money or some form of help from Japan, Japanese people were honorary white.
It's crazy.
You know, it's madness.
And it's a good example if you studied that madness and extrapolated into societies that are so-called freer. I think maybe people will begin to understand this. You and I were talking about skin color earlier, even amongst so-called black people, because I am fairer skin. I call myself toast in the summer and caramel in the winter because my skin darkens and lightens. So if we were to go by the pencil test,
Yeah.
I might be nearer white.
Oh yeah, you might be. Yeah.
In the winter months, and then black in the summer month. Why is it so difficult for people to understand that race is an artificial construct?
Because we keep using the word race. Because we keep teaching. On the one hand, you're telling people race is not real. On the other hand, it's okay to say you're this race. You know, to ask you on a government form, what race are you, to tick a race.
I hate those forms.
Yeah,
where they put that black Caribbean, black American,
black other,
European, and I'm like.
Well, we keep doing it. We keep telling each other that race is real, and so long as that's what you're teaching people, and you've taught them this all through their lives, they would believe it. Look at South Africa after apartheid, right? During apartheid, they actually had people living separately, right? The coloreds had their own areas, the whites had their own areas, the natives had their own areas and everything. And it was illegal to mix. Now, apartheid is over. You would expect that these communities would start mixing. And let's not blame every white South African for apartheid. A lot of them, the mass majority of white South Africans were against it. We're fighting against it. Of course, the government then wouldn't let us know this. But till today, I go to South Africa and I see the separation.
Yeah.
I remember in Stellenbosch, I was going to go see a play. I didn't know where it was. I considered walking there, but I was running late, so I got an Uber. So I said to the Uber guy on the way there, is it close enough so I can walk back? Black man from East Africa, it wasn't South African. He says, oh, no, don't walk back from there. It's a very dangerous place. Why? It's a colored area. This is his thought about colored people.
Yeah.
And I bet that colored people also think black areas are dangerous,
yep.
And so on and so forth. Now, because this is what they've learned growing up, even now that it's no longer illegal to mix, they're still holding on to it. This is what they know. So I think a deliberate effort has to be made to change the thinking of people.
I really want to talk about easy motion
Sure.
tourists. I really, really do. Because the thing that excited me about this was I found and I hadn't seen it particularly in books out of Nigeria in recent times. A few of them, yes, but not lots of them, where the characters didn't need to be explained. They were just human. And they were deeply flawed. They were layered, and there were people that I loved, those two guys, go slow.
Go slow and knock out.
Go slow and knock out. I know go slow and knock out.
Yes.
I know the inspector, Ibrahim. I even know Prissy Amaka and the other. I know Amaka. I know all of these people. And I know them as Amaka. Not as anything other than Amaka. And I also recognize Guy.
Oh, yeah.
I recognize that guy. So, why didn't you write a writerly writer book?
Well,
do you know what I mean by writerly writer?
I do. I'm not going to mention books that might, prove that I do. But I do. I totally understand what you mean by that. And why didn't I write that? Because I wouldn't read such books, and I would only write what I would read. It's like if you're cooking, if you want to cook the kind of things you want to eat, and I only write the kind of stories I would read. Sadly, it seems a lot of writers in Africa are writing to supply a particular demand, either real or they think is there, for a certain kind of literature. And if you look at the prizes for African literature, they also seem, I think, to reinforce this notion that African literature has to be this, has to be that. I'm thankful that people like Nnedi Okorafor are breaking that, the writing award-winning genre fiction. HBO is about to do
her film too,
which is amazing.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. And if you think about it, for me, growing up in Nigeria, I read books like Easy Motion Tourist. I read the Pace Setters books.
Do you know, I was saying that we had this.
Yeah.
I read all the Pace Setter books.
Yeah.
I read
Same here.
Amos Tutuola's books.
Oh.
All of them.
Yeah.
You know, I read Chinua Achebe, the way
Yeah.
Chinua Achebe writes, without sparseness, without leanness.
Crisp, yeah.
You know, without, I hate self-indulgent books.
Yeah, that's the right word, self-indulgence.
They're self-indulgent and they're classified as literary books so that we need to prove that we are intelligent to be able to understand it. My intelligence, as Wole Soyinka says, is my tigritude. I do not need to prove it. But you said something that I thought was really powerful when you said the challenge with writing for you, and I'm going to come back to the book itself, all that, is you were concerned about making money from writing. You know, just being able to make a living from it. I took it from an interview you did somewhere. And that took me back to the issue of African writers writing for a niche market and writing so-called this literary book in the literary tradition. And there's nothing wrong with writing literary book, although I will question a literary book that's not unreadable anyway to most people. But my challenge was the reason, why is there not a larger market? Is it just a structural thing? Or also because actually we are not writing stories people want to read. And we are not presenting the stories to people in a way that people find accessible. I'll give you an example. I hate book readings. They are so boring. They're boring. They're boring.
I understand.
The writer sits, the writer reads.
Yeah.
Some people ask questions. Everybody has Afro hair.
Yeah.
Everybody wears a bit of Adire.
Yes.
What about the rest?
We're African.
And we're African. And I'm thinking of all the people I see on the streets in Lagos who would love this book. And I already see a movement of a different kind of writing where people are writing what we might not consider to be high-minded or anything, but people are reading, people come to their events.
Yes.
How can we marry the two?
Well, we can go on and on about what led to, the decline of the culture of writing, dramatic storytelling, genre fiction, and stuff like that. It probably has to do with austerity measures way back then. It has to do. You can link it to military government and everything. You can even look at Maslow hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
At some point the poverty became so strong that I want to satisfy my immediate need for shelter, for food.
I don't agree.
I might be wrong.
Do you know why I said that? And this is important for people. Maybe I shouldn't use myself as an empirical example because it's not empirical. But that cops the Buhari time in the 85 and so Nigeria became so bad. We became so dead poor in my family, so poor. It was almost impossible to eat.
Yeah.
But myself and a lot of other kids my age at that time will still go to Mile 2 Underbridge and buy secondhand books.
Yeah.
We bought books with the little bits of money that we had.
True. We exchanged books in school. I remember in primary school then, we would exchange pesetas. We would exchange, even though it was dated then, and it Blighton novels and stuff like that. You're absolutely right. So what I'm saying is I don't know what the reason is, but there's a decline, or there was a decline in such writing. Maybe it was just Macmillan leaving, or something. But at some point, we stopped writing books like Cyprian Ekwensu's books. Jaguarana was amazing.
I love Jaguarana.
And
I want to play Jaguarana.
Oh, you should. So I don't know why we haven't. I don't understand why Nollywood, has not done Jaguarana or redone some of the other things that were done, because Jaguarana was done then, if I remember right. But something happened. I've linked it once upon a time to when we had beautiful Nigerian music. Amazing. I still listen to them. We had the Victor Waifos. We had this gentleman who died recently.
Oyabo.
We had music ahead of its time, right?
Rex Lawson.
All
of them.
Not just Nigeria, Swing Popo and all of that. And it was amazing
Even
music.
Apala music.
It was amazing.
The music from
Dalda
the north.
Ipaka.
Yeah.
it was authentic, it was real music, right? And then that declined, and we started having Nigerians doing reggae in Nigeria, doing rap, doing pop. We went through a phase where we started copying. We started trying to be like what television was showing us the West was, and we decided to try that. And that led to a decline in the quality of the music and even in the industry itself. Because people, without naming artists, they did not make as much money from the reggae. You're in Nigeria, you're doing reggae, as the Obeys made and are still making, as King Sunny Ade, as,
A lot of the Fuji musicians
yeah,
also making
Oliver De Coke,
Oliver De Coke at that time.
But now, look at the new music we're doing. We've come back to the roots. Now we're singing, we're doing music that America is copying.
Yeah.
Shakira and the rest of them. Snoop Dogg wants to do collabos with Nigerian artists. Wizkid is international.
I just want to see Snoop and Wizkid. Oh. I just want to see Snoop and Wizkid.
Yeah.
Isn't there an element of something that we are missing? If you go to either the books or the music, one of the things that happened with the military era and the collapse of institutions in Nigeria was that publishing, record labels and all of that, they moved out of the country. A lot of them haven't been foreign anyway. And the ones that were Nigerian owned became starved. I remember one of my best friends was Bola Tito Onibonje. And once you heard Onibonje, you think publishing, and all of that died.
Yeah.
So something else replaced it. It was those guys selling under the bridge.
Yes.
The distribution became more informal, more generic and informal. But because we have never understood Nigeria's informal sector, it's the same thing with Nollywood. It went from the films, BC Daughter of the River and all of that, Ogunde and all those films, to what is now known as Nollywood. They went to video films because, well, they couldn't do anything else at that time. So we were fascinated with the results without looking at the structure. And so the structure of distribution through all those Ebiumpejo Lane guys, through the guys selling on the streets, isn't that the key? We should actually, because it's about distribution, it's about being able to get it to people, isn't it?
I totally agree with you. I totally believe that the problem is distribution. Right now, as of now anyway. Making these books accessible to people and at a good price.
Yeah.
Because right now, the one thing competing for your money in Nigeria, when you think of books or even movies, is your phone airtime.
Yeah.
Right? So the books need to be priced such that if I'm thinking, should I load up credits so that I've got internet, or should I buy a book? It'll be easy. Oh, I can buy this book, there's just so much. And for that to happen, we need a government that is intellectually, that is culturally aware. The government has to get behind booksellers, has to get behind publishers. It needs to be a deliberate thing.
I'm laughing. You said something funny.
What's this?
Government that is culturally aware.
Well, I know.
Government is culturally aware. This question came from your own audience, and it says, as your work is deeply inspired by your background, are you interested in writing a piece where the hero comes from a different background than yours? I noticed the word hero, not heroine.
Yeah, I don't know why people make that mistake, but I don't let it disturb me anymore because, I refer to female actors as actors, not actresses now. So, yeah, the hero is Amaka. People think it's Guy Collins. And that's amazing. I know it's partly my fault, for giving him a narrative voice, but that really helps the story. And also, but then also look, The Great Gatsby, Heart of Darkness. The narrator is not always the hero, as it were. But anybody who reads the book from cover to cover will know without an iota of doubt who the hero is. It's
Absolutely.
Amaka.
I thought it was Amaka.
Of course it's Amaka.
It was definitely Amaka.
It's in fact, the book is part of what I'm calling the Amaka series.
Yeah.
Not the Amaka and Guy series, but the Amaka series. It's about Amaka. She's the one who does all the interesting things, but she's not self-obsessed, so she's not going to be narrating herself and telling you, oh, look at all these amazing things I'm doing, So somebody else is, is recording the encounter.
I didn't mind the
with
different
her.
points of views because I thought they made the stories stronger. Let me start with Guy.
Yeah.
Because this person is asking, would you write somebody? I mean, you already wrote Guy in there.
Yeah.
You know, he's not the hero, but
No.
he's in there. What I like about what you did about Guy is that you wrote about somebody that I could see. You put layers in there because obviously he wasn't a white savior in Africa.
No.
I like the fact that he's a naive young Englishman
Yeah.
who falls in love with a Nigerian girl in
Yeah.
England and is not working, and then wants to, you know, prove to her that, okay, if I go to your land and I survive
Yes.
there, you know, I know guys like that, and he just opts, you know, because he, you know, all his life he's lived, you know, maybe in Europe,
Yeah.
and he thinks I'll just fly over there, maybe I'll get Uber.
It'll be great.
It'll be great.
It'll be amazing.
It'll be amazing.
I'll come back with pictures.
I'll have pictures.
My Instagram will be on flick.
Absolutely. And Guy grows up very quickly.
Oh yeah, like Lagos can
Like
grow you
Lagos,
up.
yes. But also the ways in which he engages this simultaneous disgust and love. Because that's natural, especially if you've never experienced it before. You know, and I love that scene where, you know, he's pretending he's a BBC reporter, the police, and I love the policeman.
Yes,
You know, I
Ibrahim.
love what you did with the policeman. Just his nastiness on one hand,
Yeah.
at the same time, his real desire to do his job, the complexities of his role. You know, but that bit where he was like, I'm dead here now. I mean, this is the end. This is it. And how it just flips.
Yeah.
Because I've always thought that was true of Lagos.
It is quite true of Lagos. Lagos is can be a paradox. Lagos is, I mean, I lived in Lagos for a very long time, and very often I would still be shocked by discovering something new about Lagos. Just like any human being, if you get to know them enough and you pay attention enough, you discover new things about them. Just like we discover new things about ourselves. So, yes, that is what Lagos is, you know. To answer the question, though, about writing from another background
Yeah.
apart from mine, Easy Motion Tourist has a lot to do with prostitution and sex work and all of that. So I wonder what the person asking the question is talking about my background. I don't have a background in prostitution. But that said, I have written from the perspective of someone totally different to me. In fact, it's what I consider to be the best, well, at least a piece of writing I've done that I'm closest to. And it's a novella I wrote online. We're going to publish an edited version of it very soon called Chronicles of a Runs Girl.
Yeah.
The narrative voice throughout was a woman, a young girl, coincidentally called Amaka as well. And it's sort of like a prequel to Easy Motion Tourist because in the last chapter we meet Amaka of Easy Motion Tourist. And this was written, unlike my other writing, unlike Easy Motion Tourist, from a single point of view, that of the narrative voice, of the female narrative voice. I am neither female, nor do I come from the background she comes from. I have never lived a day in the life she's lived, or as far as, you know, the life I've given her. But you can write from any point of view. What's important is empathy. If you can try to understand people, to genuinely want to get to know them, if you can feel a human connection, feel their pain, you know, smile with them, you know, they're uncomfortable, you're uncomfortable. If you can have empathy with any human being, then you can understand them. And if you can understand them, then you can write about them. And in fact, I dare say, writing from a different point of view is also an exercise in getting to know people. There was an experiment with racism where they had people who had subconscious racist biases. They had them write out what they thought somebody of a different race was feeling in situations they exposed them to. And just by writing in the first person about someone of a different so-called race, changed the feelings of these people. You know, empathy, just connecting, just realizing.
There's a lot of talk about empathy, and it seems like it's often difficult to get people to naturally, we would have thought that we're naturally empathetic towards one another, but it doesn't happen ordinarily. What helps it along?
Well, I think we
Your
lose
opinion?
it. other things get in the way. If you look at children at play, a child would naturally, a baby, would start crying because another baby is crying. It's hardwired into us. As a child grows older and the child becomes to have agency, becomes to recognize that this other baby's pain is not my pain, they still react to it. You know, they take their toy over to the crying child. They pull their mum over to the crying child.
So it's the schooling around all these other things.
We unlearn it.
So, which is, of course, why this also is very, I don't want to start throwing terms like groundbreaking and all of that, but for me, a very
Please do.
Very important.
You can say groundbreaking.
You're right, because you're right. You're humanizing prostitutes here. You're making us see beyond what they do. I mean, in the course of my career, I have talked to everybody, and I remember some of the most powerful people I ever talked with were prostitutes, and I use powerful in a very loose manner, because I used to talk with these girls at there was a bar in Lagos where they used to hang to meet particularly actually men from Europe.
Yeah.
And then also in Port Harcourt, I met quite a number of prostitutes. And I've always been able to see them first as who they are and see the situation. But prostitutes generally and across culture, you know, are kind of like the other. You know, and you have taken a story where there's a female lead who's championing
The cause.
the cause.
Yeah.
Where did all that come from?
Well, the entire idea for the story was...
I mean, the right answer would have been, I like prostitutes.
Well, I like everybody, you know, and I can't say exactly where it came from, but I've had human connections with sex workers in Nigeria, you know. I was in Kiev, Ukraine, for work, and then I've never told this story publicly.
Go on.
About 4 of us, you know, I was the only black kid, black man, and 3 other white guys. We were taken, you know, by our hosts, as it were, to a bar. Turned out to be a street bar. And we are sat there, and this extremely gorgeous women who, you know, if they were walking the streets of London, somebody will spot them and they'll be the highest paid. Oh yeah. They looked amazing, I must say. And they were there. So it was obvious it was a strip joint, but what I did not realize was that it was more than that. And somebody else, I'm not saying one of my colleagues or even the people we're working with, but somebody had arranged for these girls to come to us. And so they brought, there was 4 of us, so they brought this, about 7 girls to us, lined up in front of our table. And the idea was for each one of us to pick somebody. And as these friends of mine, you know, pretended to be shy and afraid, but went ahead and we're going to go for private dances, I kept having one single thought. From looking at the women and looking at the way they, there's a lot of signals we give, which is unspoken. And the one thought on my mind was, do you want to put, whether or not I would use a prostitute, do you want to put any one of those girls in the position of the one who went with a black man? Because I could feel in them something from the look in their eyes, like, don't pick me. And it wasn't disgust, it wasn't racism that I felt, but the consequences of being the person. Because I'll be in Kiev, several times I'll be in Kiev, and I'll be the only black person I would see for 5 days, for 10 days. The only other black person would be some Nigerian guy in the airport, you know. And just that, you could tell that, or just me putting myself in their shoes, which is something I want people to do more often. I didn't want in any way for somebody to have to bear that burden. And so going back to what you've said about, you know, meeting sex workers, and they're some of the most real people, I think it's because of the amount of pain they're made to confront in order to survive in in doing what they do. Most of us, we can count the number of days we've had to do something we really don't want to do. They get to do something very intimate that they really don't want to do several times a day. Very, very few of us can tell somebody, oh yeah, I've been in a situation where I feared for my life. They're constantly in a situation where they're afraid for their lives. You know, so their emotions are on a different level. They get stronger stimulus than you and I on a daily basis. So naturally, there'll be more, their brains will have created connections, you know, that neural path that you and I just can't comprehend.
The bit of the story that I want to go back to briefly is your recognition at that point that in doing this person will have to bear burden that will make their lives harder.
Yep.
You also had to override another consideration, and that is your own ego as, but just because I'm black, why would this person? Because the issue is not just because you're black.
No.
The issue is nuanced.
Oh, very.
Very nuanced. And I'm not going to comment more on it, but I'm going to point it out as something that's very powerful. Because in different situations of either oppression or disregard or, you know, just the way we treat each other badly as human beings, there are different calls we can make. And oftentimes the easiest one is the one that serves our ego.
Oh, yeah.
And an awareness of the other calls that possibly makes life better for others. You know, it's not something we talk about too often.
It's something we unlearn. We're talking about why empathy is something that seems to be missing. Look, it's in the telling men, be boys, you have to be a man. And you have to be a man means you shouldn't cry, you shouldn't say sorry, you shouldn't accept that from somebody. We actively teach people not to feel, not to care, to be selfish, you know, and so maybe if we stop doing that, if we stop taking away that which is naturally human from children, you know, maybe then we would start becoming better as human beings.
So, well, there were many, many flawed human beings in this story, you know, but none of them was, I mean, very few of them could you stay hating only. That was also something I really, really like. I mean, I'm pointing out what, in my mind, something is saying to me, but for me, of course, this is what a book should have. But the only reason I'm pointing it out is it's not that common anymore, particularly in our modern societies, and this is across board. There's what I like to call sloganizing. So we want people to be a certain way, and we create characters that are that way. So the woman is virtuous, or this, or that. She cannot be a woman cannot just love sex and still be a good Christian.
No, oh, you like sex? No, you're going to hell.
A man cannot be vulnerable and still be really, really strong and be the ruler. You know, be able to be open about his emotions and still be the Aliko Dangote of that country. Do you know what I mean? So that sort of thing I liked in the book. For you, where did it all come from? Because you said that thing to me, which I thought was also very important, about pain. I've also always said I don't trust people who have not learned to ride pain and to live with pain. Because then how do you know?
How can you relate?
How can you relate to anything, really?
I think in most of the things I've written, except for some sci-fi type short stories, the people, I try to make them people, like real. There's an exercise they teach writers, I don't do it myself, which is to write a backstory for your characters. And then you write it like, you know, it's a piece of writing you're going to throw away, but the actual exercise of writing the backstory then informs them. I think I do a shortcut. I think I imagine people. It's just like writing them as well. And then I imagine them as people I know or I sense check, would the person really be like this? Would Amaka, if you asked me to describe Amaka, for instance, someone, as a person, as Homo fictus, in fact, I respect her and I admire her. But if you ask me to describe her, I'll tell you that she's a very nasty person. I'll say that she can be very self-centered in the way she goes about stuff. She can be thoughtless sometimes. But this is how human beings are. Very few people are one way all the time.
Absolutely.
Very few people are evil all the time. Look at Knockout, who's this terrible human being but has compassion for dogs. And this is true of human beings. Recently, we discovered the so-called billionaire kidnapper in Nigeria. But look at his family. They didn't know about this. At least the children didn't know about it. All they know is their father, and he's been a father to them. He's been, on the one hand, he goes about kidnapping people, torturing them, killing them, causing extreme pain for their families, and sometimes loss of life, sometimes loss of savings and everything. But on the other hand, he can go home and still be a father. Still have them sit on his lap.
Isn't that also like the politicians, where somebody steals a fortune?
Oh, yeah.
And in stealing a fortune, millions of people die.
Oh, yeah.
But he's also our friend and our uncle. And how do you not have judgments and just know this? I mean, with politicians, we must have judgments.
Yeah.
That's collective. But with how do you marry justice, judgments, and empathy?
By accepting the flaws in yourself. One of the ways I think is if you really look and examine your own life and who you are and your thinking and your actions and your responses to stuff, you might discover, in my case, that, okay, I'm not so great all the time. But if you asked me, are you a good person? Yeah, I believe I am. But there are times I'll do things that I'll think about later on and think, okay, I should have behaved differently. I should have acted differently. I should have said something different. I wasn't good in that situation. But I can justify it. If I don't examine it, then I can automatically justify my actions. I can take, for instance, every single one of us, we believe we're good, right? We're nice, we're good, we think of other human beings, but we can walk past, in winter, we can walk past a beggar in a very thin sleeping bag who we know is going to sleep out in the cold and freeze to death. We can walk by and not put a coin in his cup. We can justify it automatically by telling ourselves he's only going to go have drugs. Sometimes when we even drop a coin, even sometimes when we're overtaken by God knows what, and we look in our wallet for, no, I'm not going to give you a coin, I'm going to give you real proper money. And we look for that £5 note and drop it. We've still not done anything. We've only bought justification, because you still walk away, going back to your warm home, the safety of your house, while you've left another human being. A lot of them die from exposure.
Yeah.
But we can do it.
Also because we think somebody else will take care of it.
Yeah, it's not my problem. Somebody else will do it.
And we
The
don't
government should be
ensure
doing
that
it.
whoever we allow the responsibility for our collective, does do what they need to do. I want to go to your blog, your website, your satire website, which of course was how your publishers and you met.
Yes.
I saw an interview like that. I thought it was really fascinating, where they'd been reading this blog and they wanted to know, one of your writers, we were interested in you. And you're like, actually, I wrote all this.
It's me.
So you were writing satire.
Yeah.
You were writing satire for Nigerians.
Yeah, I know.
Nigerians don't get satire.
Yeah, the slogan of the website was, some people just don't get us. Because some people just simply did not get satire. The very first story I wrote, I believe, was a Nigerian guy who went on to Dragon's Den asking for money to start a church. And the dragons were
oh my God, I didn't read that one. That would be good.
That's the very first one I wrote. What are you talking about? You want to start a church, and that the first people who read it got it, because I sent it to friends, to people who would get it, and they got it. And then subsequently, the website became, because as of then, nobody knew who was writing it. I had a few people who wrote with me. Actually, I invited other people to write. Very few people who knew who I was, who was doing this website. Which is why Chronicles of a Run Scale, written on the website, doesn't have my name against it. You know, and it's been studied at the University of Birmingham, Chronicles of a Run Scale.
I discovered it recently, and I really, because I've always wanted us to examine the idea of the so-called runs girl beyond the label,
Yeah,
you know. So yes, you were doing this website,
yeah.
and you were writing these pieces, and I know that there's been a few you wrote that got you into trouble.
Oh yeah, or could have. They didn't know who I was.
Ah.
They did not. My name is not there. I had. Well, some of the names actually had my name in it. I'd, you know.
Yeah. But
change
why
it
do you think
round.
Nigerians don't get satire? I mean, let's not say Nigerians. Certainly, some but it seems majority don't get satire.
Let me put it this way. I wouldn't say Nigerians don't get satire, but there's a breed or a class or a subculture of Nigerians who don't seem to get satire, who believe in Illuminati, who go to church. I'm generalizing, you know, but when I think of people who simply don't get satire, I think of, you know, churchgoers and deeply religious, homophobic, anti-everything people who are close-minded. And I think you can make an argument for close-mindedness and the ability to appreciate, you know, the finer things in life, you know, to be able to appreciate culture. I mean, if you're close-minded, it is exactly what it is. You're close-minded,
Yeah.
you know, and you just cannot see another possibility. So it has to be black or white, and satire sort of, you know, exists in that in between.
You spoke once when somebody asked a question about what you would love. I can't remember the question probably. You said, "What would you love to be?" You said you'd love to be invincible. You know, you'd love, because the idea of invisibility is just
Yeah,
great. Why wouldn't you
invisible.
want to be
Yeah.
invisible? And I thought, what does it mean?
Be invisible, you can people watch. I do something on the train. Part of my ritual when I'm going into work every morning is I do my breathing on, you know, abdominal breathing on the train, and then when I can't stop my mind from wandering, I just pick people and I imagine lives for them. You know, I just imagine, you know, this person is probably, and it's amazing lives, you know, KGB operatives who's forgotten, who doesn't realize.
If I was on the train, what?
If you were on
and
the
you
train
didn't know me,
and I didn't know you,
what am I letting myself in for?
I'll be looking at you and I might imagine I see this person and she's on her phone, and say you have a very blank look at the phone, so it's not laughing or crying or whatever. I might think, okay, they've carried on the argument from last night. She's had time to sleep over this argument with him again, which they should not have had. And the reason this argument is continued on the phone is because he was on the phone, because, you know, he's in America and she's in England, and the strain of the relationship of being in different places, different time zones is beginning to wear out. But she's had a time to sleep on it, and now, without him, she's able to gather her thoughts and compose with this calmness that I see now, this lack of passion, as she's furiously typing into her phone on the one hand, but there's a presence of mind there, and it's because over the night she's lost sleep yet again. By the time she gets to where she's going, where the train stops, she's hoping to have finished what she has to say, because she knows if she doesn't finish it by then and type send, if it's an incomplete thought and she has to get off the train, by the time she gets to work, she might have decided that it's not that bad like she does all the time. It's not his fault like she does all the time. She might have rationalized what it is they were fighting about, and then lose the will to send this message. And then she deletes it and tells herself, at least I got it out of me. It was cathartic. I just needed to vent, now I've done. But then she's lost an opportunity to be assertive, to do her.
I don't like it.
Yes for it, I'm sorry.
There's too much man. Too much man.
I
So
know.
much emotion towards man. Oh my God. There's no
I'm
food
sorry.
in it.
No food, no.
No food, no money, no work, no Nigeria. Those are the only things that keep me up. But I like the idea of seeing myself as a woman. I should find a man to organize over. I think that my life might be better.
I just think of these things. It could be a guy, and I'm thinking, okay, is thinking of his boyfriend. It could be somebody. It depends on the look. I mean, I've had KGB agents. I've had a member of the royal family, unknown, who's refused a title. You know, who said, "I don't want to have this title." She's a fourth cousin, twice removed from somebody, and this is what she does. She makes her life common. I just imagine stuff, but then it's an exercise for my writing, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, it's
Yes.
so that
I'm going to start trying it.
It's fun. People watching, you know, you come up with terrible stories for some people. Sometimes you come up with a story that you convince yourself is real, and you're like, oh flip, she's just dropped a bomb on the train.
But you know, the story you told, talking about acting, is it would be fascinating for someone like me to try and get into the head of a woman who agonizes over her man in that way. Mm-hmm. It just occurred to me that actually, what does that feel like to have a man in your life where it's so wearing?
Yeah.
You know, that might be something. This is the point where I've come to that question that you get to ask me.
What are your thoughts on decriminalization of sex work in Nigeria?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. I've looked at it. You know, I get into trouble because I'm considered this flaming liberal who's just doing this thing because it's cool. I'm not cool. I've never wanted to be cool. I've always wanted to be me. What I am is try to the best of my ability to ensure that we don't stop human beings from being well and living well.
Thank you.
In the process of it, of course, you have to come against all the ideas that we need to unpack and unlearn. I think that if it is no longer a crime, those who choose sex work will choose sex work, and it will be organized better.
Be protected.
Then it will take away incentive to abuse people. Because the challenge with it is the ways in which, because it's underground, the workers have no rights, the workers have no recourse, and there are all kinds of people milking, particularly young girls and boys too.
Boys too, yeah.
So,
absolutely.
I mean, I roll my eyes when we talk about decriminalizing in Nigeria, because the challenge with Nigeria is bigger than even the laws. Because if by some miracle, and that future will come, we did manage to do that in Nigeria, then you'll have to enforce it, won't you?
Yeah.
And the challenge really is the structure and the institutions to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But first things first, we should start having a conversation about, and if you wanted my support, I would be open.
Cool.
So because I have all these girls whose faces, I can remember their faces, I can remember everything about them, who spoke to me, who trusted me with their story. In fact, one of them is dead, and I have the rights to her story. I would like to humanize them. I would like that what happened to them does not happen to others. Yeah. So yes.
That's cool. Thank you.
So we're cool.
Yeah, we're cool.
Right. Thank you, Leah. Thank you for this
much.
book. You know, I'm looking forward to the next one. The next one's titled
When Trouble Slips.
When Trouble Slip Yanga Goweka.
Yes, it's currently with Cassava Republic, my publishers.
Right,
so
yes.
we're working on editing it, but I'm making new changes which might delay the editing, but we're hoping it'll come out first half of next year.
Fantastic. I can't wait to see it. And good job with Cassava too. I love what they're doing. Right, that's my conversation. Yeah, long one, another long one. But you know, what's the point of bringing people into my home if I'm not going to dig deep? All right, thank you for watching. Remember to send questions. And I'll see you again next week. Bye.